even know how to intro this video. I can't even think of something funny or clever because I'm so mad about it. Welcome back to the channel. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here. We have another well-researched rant coming for you. Several weeks ago, maybe months ago, I don't know at this point, I did a video about media literacy and book banning. And something that I'm not so proud about in that video is that I very much did some sort of skirting around topics and why books are banned. I'm not going to be doing so much of that in this video, but today we are talking about another interesting aspect of book banning, which is penalizing librarians for providing materials, despite the fact that that is their job. So, come with me to learn what started this, why I'm feeling this way, and I will be using my notes app the entire time because I have a whole lot of research on here. I was just sitting there today and I literally blacked out. I have so much research that you can't even see that I'm going to tell you in a second. But where did this start? Well, I heard the news of Idaho House Bill 710. Now, you might be going, Cameron, what does that mean? Well, Idaho House Bill 710 attempts to regulate materials that they deem harmful to children and allows children or their parents to file a legal claim against a library if they obtain materials harmful to minors, by allowing libraries to get fined every time they provide an obscene book. So, in my previous video I talked a lot about, in the previous video I mentioned, not like the most previous video, but I talked a lot about book banning and how they're trying to censor a lot of books, mostly in the name of protecting the children. So we'll dive into that a little bit more. But across the internet, of course, I saw that that bill had been signed into action within the last week as of recording this. So I kind of got into a rabbit hole of book banning versus protecting the children and what are obscene books, which we'll discuss what obscene books are in a second. But yeah, I also, when I was going down this rabbit hole, along with reading Idaho House Bill 710, I also found that Alabama legislators want to base library funding on if librarians listen to them about which books they should move or remove from their library. So they're willing to allocate a certain amount of funding to moving or removing books. This is all also according to AL.com, which is an Alabama news website. But they want to allocate a certain amount of money of the library's budget to moving and removing books. NPR, expounding on that, states that librarians have been fired in the state of Alabama for refusing to move or remove books from the shelves. So we've reached the point in modern day America, where I am from, where I am talking about all of those things, that we're actually firing people for not censoring materials, specifically librarians who are supposed to provide materials. The logic of it is not making sense, okay? We're gonna talk about a few more things, but it makes sense that people are trying to restrict education because the less educated people there are, the more that politicians can kind of pull the wool over their eyes and operate unchecked, essentially. Spoiler alert, that's a big reason. If they can keep US citizens dumb, then they've got a lot more free reign than they would otherwise. But I'm jumping around a little bit. I made a whole script and I'm still jumping around a little bit. But let's talk about some of the bills that have been passed this year, along with Idaho House Bill 710 and this Alabama bill we just discussed. According to every library, in the year 2024, there have been 122 bills between more than 25 states in the US that either limit accesses to books or complete databases, limit funding or defund or close libraries, segregate or ban materials that patrons and or parents don't agree with, and criminalize librarians and educators for providing material that is deemed to be obscene. The link for this Every Library map that is a wonderful resource is going to be down in the description below, where I've put all of my cited sources. So you'll get to see that. Please feel free to look around, look into your own state. I know my home state has several that they've tried to pass this year that I am now very aware of and will be keeping an eye on. But 122 bills to specifically suppress libraries. And this is not specifically correlated to red states or blue states, because several very blue states, like California for instance, have actually tried to pass bills. And this is just in the year 2024. As of recording this, it is April 18th. We are only about a third of the way through the year, which is insane. Why are they targeting this so much? I feel like there are other problems in the United States today, speaking as an American, but you know, if that's the hill they're willing to die on, we really should look into it, especially as educated people, as readers who enjoy learning things. We should be examining this and wondering, hey, why are they specifically doing this? But a word that I saw a lot in my research for this video was the word obscene. Obscene materials. Teachers will face prison time if they provide obscene materials to minors. We're back again to the protecting children. But I really wanted to look into that word obscene, because I know obscene is used in a lot of legal language. So I looked more into obscene. So NBC says that the US Supreme Court uses a legal test named the Miller test, which is named after a 1974 court case that made its way up to the Supreme Court called Miller v. California. But they use the Miller test to determine if a material is deemed obscene, and then there are laws related to obscene materials. So, what a work needs to be classified as obscene is 3 things, and they all have to be present for it to be classified as obscene, okay? So I'm gonna read through these and kind of explain what they are, and maybe I'll put them up on the screen right here so you guys can see it. A work can be described as obscene if it describes or shows sexual content in a patently offensive way, if it is found to appeal to the prurient interest, which is a shameful or morbid interest in nudity, sex, or excretion by the average person. So, essentially, if a normal person thinks there's kind of a morbid interest in that sexual content. And the final thing that it needs is it needs to lack serious literary, artistic, political, educational, or scientific value. So, there are a lot of problems with this and using the word obscene in the legal language when this is the legal definition of obscene, okay? So I found there were 3 really big problems. If you find more, please put them down in the comments below, because I would love to hear what you guys think about this topic. So the big issues with that obscene material. One part of sexual content includes sexuality, or who you're attracted to. So homosexuality is still listed under that description of sexual content, okay? Which, a lot of these laws were written much earlier than today. So, no one has amended or said, hey, homosexuality is actually not a big part of this, which we can directly see in book bans. According to the ALA, titles that feature queer or BIPOC people make up 47% of books targeted in censorship attempts. So, among the top 10 banned books last year, I think most, if not all of them, featured queerness or BIPOC characters. Which I'm still, if anyone knows anything about this, I would love to know. I didn't really necessarily look into it super far because the video is about something else. The whole sexual content, including queerness and sexuality and stuff like that, that neatly fits under the definition of sexual content. I am curious, other than obviously systemic issues and racism of the people who are banning the books, I am curious why BIPOC stories are also kind of included in this. So if you guys have any theories or ideas or know, please comment down below. If homosexuality is described as sexual content, then it technically hits at least one of these benchmarks of obscene. Now remember, you need to hit the 3 benchmarks for it to legally be considered obscene. Additionally, let's move on from that. The second major issue that I noticed is that third point, which I'll read to you again. Lacks serious literary, artistic, political, educational, or scientific value. So, now we get into a subjective idea, which is what has value. So, I think lawyers' jobs are literally to debate what words mean sometimes. I mean, if you're American and older than probably me, you will probably distinctly remember Bill Clinton arguing the meaning of the word with. If value is such a subjective idea, then you get into a place where one person can argue, oh, this book has no value, but another person who read it might say, oh, this book absolutely has value in these ways. So, when you introduce such a subjective idea into a legal definition, that's where things get a little bit shaky. I mean, I think a lawyer could tear that idea apart if it ever made it up to court. Basically, we're playing a game of who determines the value. Is it librarians? Is it politicians and legislatures? Is it the people who are crying for these books to be banned? That makes this definition a little bit harder and definitely creates a major problem. The third, and I would say biggest issue with the idea of obscenity and banning books based on if they're obscene, according to the Criminal Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. It says, federal law prohibits the possession with intent to sell or distribute obscenity, to send, ship, or receive obscenity, to import obscenity, and transport obscenity across state borders for the purposes of distribution. The Department of Justice quite literally says obscene materials cannot be distributed. It is completely illegal for obscene materials to be distributed, which also means publishers cannot sell obscene books to libraries. They are literally legally not allowed to do that. So, if a book hits all 3 of those categories, libraries aren't even allowed to acquire them. So most libraries don't have obscene materials in terms of the legal definition, which inherently destroys this whole argument they're making. Now, when I did look into Idaho's House Bill 710, they did not use the word obscene in their language. I specifically looked into that and they did not say the word obscene. Probably because they were trying to work around this whole obscenity thing, because realistically, they know they cannot ban something like that. But omitting the word obscene, like when they don't use that, they primarily use the phrase harmful materials. So that also kind of brings us back to a subjective point of view. The idea of value and harmful, both of those things are kind of subjective. You can base that off of your own opinions. I might think something is more harmful than you think, or you might think something is not harmful at all, where I think it's deeply harmful. You know what I mean? Let's talk about a law that my darling home state, Indiana, just put into action on January 1st of this year. According to AP News, Indiana removed the phrase educational purposes as a reason for librarians to provide certain materials. So, even if you were to provide a child with a book about sexual education, for instance, and you said, oh, completely for educational purposes, they asked for it, they wanted to learn more about it, that's still not a valid reason in the eyes of the law in Indiana anymore. And if teachers provide materials like that, provide materials that are deemed obscene or harmful, there are those words again, they receive a felony, punishable by up to 2.5 years in jail and $10,000 in fine. What world do we live in where librarians, the stereotype of law-abiding citizens, at least in my mind, can now become felons for providing a book that someone disagrees on? What is going on? So, let's look back around to those words again, obscene and harmful. If we know that distributing obscene materials is quite literally illegal, federally decided on, that's illegal. So we know libraries aren't actually providing any obscene materials because they are not even allowed to acquire obscene materials. And we also know that harmful materials are determined more by the original. Why are we targeting librarians? Why is it their fault if people are seeking out certain types of knowledge. And we also kind of have to ask ourselves, why is the government allowing just people to determine what's harmful? So in terms of people determining what's harmful, we get more into book bans and how many book bans there have been. So according to the America Libraries magazine, in their annual report, their yearly statistics for libraries across America, they said that the ALA tracked that 4,240 unique titles were challenged in 2023, which is up 65% over the 2,571 that were challenged in 2022. Additionally, before the year of 2021, I think the average of banned books per year, or books that were even challenged, was only like 290. Like, it wasn't that much. It's increased significantly. So they also did a search over 954 cases. Only 3% were attempts of censorship by librarians or educators. All other cases, every single other case, was determined by patrons of the library, parents of children, pressure groups, administrations, and or the government. So, when you place that sort of power, because I do think there is a power-hungry aspect to it, parents or patrons or whoever's banning this book or attempting to get this book banned is looking at something going, I don't like it, and my government, my administration, my whatever, my school system allows me to bring it forward and say, this should be banned. And a lot of times those situations don't really account for librarians. Like, even if librarians get a say in it, they're widely ignored. So one of the books on the top 10 banned list this year I read for the first time was The Bluest Eye, which is a wildly relevant and important text, especially in Black American history. That's one of the most banned books. It's because someone said, I don't like it. I don't like that. And a lot of people just backed those people and said, yeah, we don't like it either. Banned. So, regarding all of these people just going and attempting to get books banned, that's having major consequences. Now that laws are changing and stuff like that, people can literally put librarians in prison because they don't want their kid to read this book. When in reality, that's much more of a home issue in my mind. Parents should be keeping an eye on what their kids are reading and reading the backs of books when they bring them home. There was a big, story on the internet about how a little girl brought the book Icebreaker into class, which, based on its cover, looks like it is child friendly, and it's not. It's an adult book. It has lots of sexual content, and she just brought it into school because her parents didn't look over it. And yet what we're doing, instead of parents taking accountability and saying, let me read your book before you do it, or let me do these things, we're now stuck in a situation where it's like, my child read this book because I didn't pay enough attention to them, and now I'm mad, so I'm gonna blame librarians and literally have them fine thousands of dollars because they provided this material. Use your brain, please. So along with putting librarians literally in prison, we are also taking away valuable educational materials that can absolutely be used for education purposes. And a lot of books have been found to really increase empathy, particularly fiction books, because you're literally putting yourself in other people's shoes. Now, I wonder why, maybe, we would need to be less educated and less empathetic towards people who are different from ourselves. I wonder if that's forcing something. I wonder if that's helping certain people get into power because they are betting on people not knowing enough about them, or not able to do research, or not empathizing with the people that they are purposefully ignoring or even going against sometimes. I wonder, maybe, that really just kind of opens up the question of what exactly are they trying to protect children from? Because, they're perfectly happy trying to limit children's worldview to try and convince them that everybody is like them and anybody who isn't should be treated as bad. They are quite literally willing to put people in prison who try to provide education to children, or at least a resource for kids slash minors. Honestly, that doesn't even necessarily always include kids, because I would consider some teenagers to be moving out of childhood, but providing minors with materials that can either help them learn how to do their own research or just provide them materials with some sources. Now we're criminalizing that. There's so much to unpack. I'm still trying to remain professional, but I do want to explicitly say it is for a reason. And you are welcome to do your research. I actually really encourage you to do your research besides this video that I'm currently making for you. But book bannings don't go up 65% in 1 year just on their own. That's a lot of heavy stuff, and I know my channel is not normally an entirely heavy topic. I try to approach everything with positivity, but truly I am tired and I am concerned with how much that they are doing without us even recognizing it. I mean, I truly did not know about the bill that was passed in Indiana until today, when I did my research, 4 months after it's already been passed. That's insane. But it is not all a negative thing. I do want to tell you some good news. There are definitely people out there fighting for literacy. There are definitely librarians who are standing up to the system and honestly losing their jobs over it, which is so unfortunate. But there are people fighting for this. In fact, there are even some legislators. So it's not a situation of all legislators are doing things. There have actually been, this is also from Every Library, which I also put that map down there below. Despite all of these things that I've just told you, 69 bills have been introduced in America this year to help protect and fund libraries. Some states have even gone so far as to try and prohibit banning in public libraries, like New Jersey and New York. New Jersey is actually actively trying to push bills that allow for privacy for readers. They have, I think, the Freedom to Read Act, and they have, I think that it's like a Reader's Privacy Act. I can't remember the exact name of it. But they have those literally working their way through the system right now. New York has also been attempting to push bills that increase media literacy. They want to have media literacy appointed professionals in libraries all over the state, which is excellent. They want to put media literacy professionals in all libraries and school systems and things like that, which I have talked about in other videos as a major thing that I think needs to be developed in lots of people. In terms of librarians themselves, I just mentioned that a lot of them are losing their jobs over this because they truly do not believe in the system. Librarians do so much for the community that so many people do not see, but librarians continue to provide free resources all over the United States between housing consulting and classes, social justice, accessibility, and economics. They are also still encouraging and reinforcing education and literacy. And I know my local library constantly has just like clubs and just classes and helping people to learn things. I think literally the other week they had a beginner's coding class. And librarians do a lot of that work to get the community involved and to provide free resources. Libraries are one of the few places that can still be considered third spaces because you don't have to spend any money on them. But there are lots of things you can do to support these libraries. But I do want to take this moment to recognize how much librarians do and how hard librarians work and how passionate they often are in what they're doing. It's incredible. I admire librarians so much. So if you are a librarian watching this video, please hear me when I say, like, you are appreciated. I know it doesn't feel like it in the modern US, but there are lots of people like myself who are just so grateful that you're doing the work that you are doing. So, we're on to the final part of the video. I hope this was informative to you all. Like I said, have included all of my sources cited below, plus some extra resources if you want to do some extra reading. Along with those extra resources, if you enjoyed this video or learned something from it, please like. If you have any thoughts about this topic, I would love to hear them. Please comment down below. If you enjoy the work I'm doing, subscribe. If you are already subscribed and you still want to see all the videos that I'm posting, hit the bell for the notification. So now that I've got all the YouTube-y stuff out of the way, let's talk about what we can do to help these librarians in times like these, because it must, I'm not a librarian obviously, but it must be really scary, this idea that you are being prohibited in a lot of stuff that you're working for, that you love doing, and that you could potentially lose your job over. So let's talk about what we can do to help them, okay? In the United States. I don't know if you're international. I don't know how exactly you guys can support that. If you guys know, please let us know down in the comments. But what we can do to help them, we can call our legislators, we can call offices of the people who are voting for these terrible bills that are restricting libraries and criminalizing librarians. Of course, we can vote. We are in charge of the legislators who are getting elected into these offices. So if we really don't like what they're doing, this year is an election year, and hopefully you can vote them out. Another thing we can do is check out organizations such as Fight for the First, which is an organization that helps fight for our rights in the First Amendment. You can also look up Save School Libraries, I think .com, .org, I don't remember, it'll be linked down there. And action.everylibrary.com, that is where they house the maps that I told you about that tell you all of the legislation that they're trying to pass for and against libraries. But they are a great organization too. All of those things you can donate to. I plan on making a donation myself once I finish editing this video. You can also stand up to people who are attempting to ban books in your community. If you are around a school, if you're employed in a school, if you are a parent at a school, you can go to board meetings and say, hey, I don't think this book should be banned, here's why. I think you guys are making a bad decision, I think you're infringing on my child's desire to learn. Of course, you can continue reading books, especially banned books. Like, they do keep an eye on how much revenue those books produce. So if you have a local bookstore, you can go buy a banned book, you can request them at libraries, because some libraries' banned books are just taken off the shelves. And if you request for them specifically, they might be able to provide it for you. And then, of course, as always, the best way to support your library is go get a library card from them and visit and use their resources regularly. So go do all the things, go support organizations, call your legislatures, vote, and of course, go visit your local library. I will see you all next time. Goodbye!